Lamar.
Mackenzie.
I don't know why. I just feel like this is like very, like just old Hollywood was the energy I was going for. Anyways, I have a
Is this how
question.
everyone talked back then? I feel like sometimes
I
movies
mean,
like this take me out of it because I'm like, did people really talk like that? I'm not saying they didn't, but are we
like a
just
little
basing
bit.
it on movies? Like,
It's a bit stylized that way.
yeah,
Like people
okay.
did have like a stylized accent, especially Katharine Hepburn had a very real, like legit accent like this. So we'll get into it. But I have a quick question for you before we start.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so Howard Hughes is like a bazillionaire, and they almost don't touch on that enough. He's like in financial distress a lot of this, but like he had stupid fucking money, right? He had fuck you money. So, my question to you is if you had fuck you money where you could do whatever you wanted, build the fastest planes, produce a crazy film that took $4 million, or, whatever it is, what would you build? What would you do? What would be the thing?
Not date a 15-year-old. I'll get that out of the way real quick.
Please, yes, do not date
Question of,
15
I
year olds.
mean,
Fucking hell.
yeah, I know we're not in the plot yet, but good of them to not completely whitewash this character and make it seem like he was a total angel genius. But anyway, we'll get to his eccentricities in a minute. You remember that movie Rollerball? It's like the rollerblading. I don't
Yeah,
even
like
remember who.
I don't remember, like I don't remember the plot. I remember that it existed. Yes.
That. That's what I would do. I would make Rollerball real with all my money and make it as cool as possible because I feel like that movie was way ahead of
Wow.
its time, and we just know no billionaire. Elon Musk needs to circle back and rewatch that if anybody knows him and can throw it on a Friday night movie night. Let's
I
make
feel like we
Rollerball
could pick a
happen.
better billionaire for that, Like I actually know a couple. I know some like nice ones. We can ask them.
You know nice billionaires?
I do actually.
Can you name
I
drop
do.
them here, or is that not good?
No, there are like active NDAs to that effect, but
Wow.
no, there. I actually know two very lovely billionaires. I would say, yeah,
I've
yeah,
never met them,
which is a rarity.
so
I agree with you. Very rare.
surprised you don't bring me around them or them around me. That's
Listen, we don't hang out. Like I know them, professionally, but they're nice people.
does it
All
rhyme
right.
with Bark Fuckerberg?
No,
You have to tell me if it does. Okay.
I don't think he
Um,
would make the list. Let's be
okay.
serious.
Well, what about you? If you were a billionaire, what dream would you make come true?
Um, you're gonna laugh because you're gonna say I'm just saying it to be whatever,
Are you going to say world
to look
peace?
good. No, I mean, but close.
Okay.
No, I genuinely, when I was coming up with this question earlier, the first thing that I thought of was free hospitals,
Yeah.
like just free hospitals, where you could get care. Um, and then the second thing that I thought of was free housing.
Okay.
So I feel like I would do, if you're, again, fuck you money billionaire with a B, like I feel like we can do that, and maybe there are some qualifiers and things, but like build a lot of that infrastructure. I think that would be really cool. I
Yeah.
would do like a lot of like Mackenzie Scott's my idol. You know what I mean? Like she's a bad bitch just giving away her money. Like that would be, I think, the energy I would
What
want
about
to.
Mr. Beast? Is he another one of your idols? He does the same
Oh my
thing.
god.
So no double standards. Um, Sorry. Well, I was speaking in all seriousness. I feel really bad that I don't remember who this was, but I was in Chicago last week at a work trip and talked to a bunch of people. But I remember over drinks talking to someone from our EMEA team in Europe that was specifically talking about, like, I feel like if you are a first world country, in order to check all the boxes of we're a first world country, you should be able to provide all of your citizens housing, medical, and food. Like that is just something everyone who is a citizen should be entitled to in some capacity, right? Some people would say that's
These
a
are
pipe dream, but
inalienable human rights,
right.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it's America not really making that happen, but
No, and it used to be like philanthropy used to be. I know it exists today, but it was like a duty, It was like even the shitty ones. Don't get me wrong, all these billionaires and of the early 19th century were not all angels, but there was this like obligation to give back. The
mm-hmm.
Carnegie Mellons, the J.P. Morgans, these folks were giving back big chunks of their fortune to create public access to libraries, for example,
Mm-hmm.
like just resources that were for the masses. So anyway, I just think that's something we've moved away from a little too much. So I would totally, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do some cool stuff for me, but I would for sure, I would start there.
That's a really smart place to start. Let's hard pivot to someone who's going to build airplanes, make movies, and have some questionable sexual escapades. I don't even want to use that word. That feels dirty, but choices.
Choices were made. Choices were made. Okay, let's roll. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lamar.
And we are closing out Cate Blanchett month with her Oscar-winning role, first Oscar, in The Aviator.
Nice. So, but she was nominated for Elizabeth, but didn't win, I guess.
Correct.
And then she was nominated for the second Elizabeth, but this was her first win.
This is her first win, and it's for Best Supporting Actress. And fun fact, no spoilers, she's the first one to win a Best Actor or Actress nominee for playing a former Oscar winner, because she's playing Katharine Hepburn, who also has won an Oscar.
Has anybody else done that?
No.
Like, have there been any? So. Okay, so she's the only one to this point.
Yeah, I think she's the only one.
Okay, interesting.
So pretty, cool little random factoid. Almost like a baseball stat, but I'll take it. Okay, so what are we drinking to power us through this one?
So, well, I am not drinking. I guess that's the news. I have some bad news for you guys. I am not medically cleared to consume alcohol this episode. I had a steroid injection in my spine to cure one of my many ailments. I'm 41 years old.
It's just like roid rage is about to commence. He's just doing the roids. Well, I was going to say,
the good news, the bad news is I have steroids in my system, so I'm not allowed to drink, or it might stop them from doing their job. The good news is I have steroids in my system, so I'm going to have a lot of energy this episode. Mackenzie is drinking 2 ounces of bourbon, 3 ounces of whole milk for HH himself, 1 ounce of simple syrup, 2 dashes of vanilla extract. You're going to garnish that with nutmeg, freshly grated, preferably. And Mackenzie did say, make sure you gently stir this up, or did you say stir or shake?
You can shake it or stir it. Just like don't overdo it. It's gonna get frothy and weird.
Yeah, don't get watered down milk. That's the worst. That's why nobody likes skim. It's basically water. So, and we are calling this Howard's Punch.
Indeed, yes, it is based off of. If you didn't realize, milk punch is a cocktail that is basically this, but he drinks a lot of milk in the movie, so thought it was fitting. Anyway, okay, non-cheers, cheers. Did you bring yourself something?
I didn't bring. I'm not even going to hydrate. I'm just going to
You're not even hydrating.
Go right at this. Yeah.
I told you needed to just drink milk.
And that's honestly, this is the first time I've broken the rule because I'm not drinking while watching something. So sorry, guys. I feel like that's bad luck. We'll see how shitty this episode is.
I just feel like bad juju. This is we drink and we watch things. Like it doesn't have to be
alcohol. I'm looking around in the room. There's a lava lamp I can probably crack open.
I love that we both were like, the lava lamp?
Well, there's liquid in here somewhere. Okay.
Okay, please don't drink the lava lamp. I will not. Okay, well, I'll enjoy the Howard's Punch for you. I did think this is one you would like, so I think you should make it later. I'm
wondering, I guess the syrup goes, like, it doesn't have a problem, like, getting absorbed into the whole milk. It's not like oil and water kind of situation.
Adding sugar to milk. Okay, I mean, basically, it's the same stuff. Yeah. Yeah. It balances really well.
I'll give it a try at some point.
Okay, report back when you're not on the roids. All right, so we'll do some basics as per usual, and then we'll get into this one. It's quite long. I have a lot of notes. We are going to try to be concise, I promise. So in an effort to do that, I did something fun this week where I decided to pick people's best known and least known film instead.
I thought you were going to say I did something fun, and I was going to say, fuck the cast and crew. Let's just talk about the plot. Okay, sorry. Continue.
Oh, that could be fun too. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, basics. The Aviator, 2004. This is actually a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 86% from critics, and 79% from audiences, which is, really solid across the board. But I don't know why I just felt like it was going to be higher. From like my nostalgic memory of the time, I should say.
This was only my second time watching this, and I do have to admit, I kind of slept on this. I forgot how good it is. I think at the very least you're getting an incredible performance out of everyone involved, but especially Cate Blanchett. And then this was the reminder to me of just for how long Leo has been this good, you know? Like,
Yeah.
he was kind of coming into his own, you know, he had Titanic, he had a couple others, he had Gangs of New York. That was before this, right? But like,
After?
was it? I thought Departed was after that. But either way, like, this is, I think, when you really see him in like his adult roles. Like, Catch Me If You Can, kind of starting to come into it, but this from front to back feels like the Leo we have today.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think it's like a pivotal shift in his career, this particular role. Our director here, Martin Scorsese, he has done a gazillion things, as we know. His most well-known is probably Goodfellas. And we really, most of his art. This is actually his 20th film, I believe, fun fact. But yeah, he did The Irishman most recently, which is, wouldn't say lesser known, but it was a Netflix thing. Our writer here, however, John Logan, does great shit. Tons of great shit, including but not limited to Skyfall. I love that one. I think that's one of the best
most
Bond
of the
movies.
Craig Bonds, yeah.
Gladiator, the OG, not the second one. The second one is trash. Fight me. Howard Hughes, The Secret Life by Charles Higham is our inspiration here, is our source material for, the bio of the biopic of it all.
You didn't give you said you were going to do a worst one for each. You didn't give one for John Logan.
I don't think there is a worst one.
I can tell you what it's going to be. You ready for this?
What?
He wrote Michael, which is about to hit theaters, the biopic of Michael Jackson. It is getting roasted. So
that's him?
That is him as the writer on that, unless
I can't believe he wrote it. Like, let's be honest. This is a very divisive character in this day and age. I'm sorry. He just is. So I'm surprised that you went out on that limb.
I mean, I would pull out I feel like the Rotten Tomato score is like a 20-something right now. I could be wrong, but yeah.
Well, all right, John. There's your low. There's your low. Okay, a couple other folks I want to call out in this one in particular, because especially in this one, I think it really matters a lot. And we're going to talk about it. Is the cinematography here is Robert Richardson. We have talked about him before on The Hateful Eight, but he's also done A Few Good Men, and he's actually won Best Cinematography at the Oscars 3 times, and he's one of only 3 people to do that, which is bonkers. So, yeah, I didn't do a worst for these guys either, because they're all legends. The actors I did that for. The next legend up is Howard Shore, who did the music here. If that wasn't clear, he has done the music for Lord of the Rings, all of them. And then your favorite, this is for you, The Departed.
Ooh,
so,
okay.
His little Scorsese partnership continues.
I mean, to be fair, for The Departed, he just played Dropkick Murphys like 7 times. That was the score.
Which, to be fair, was an excellent choice.
He was like, let it drop again. Yeah, run it back.
He was like, Boston, like, this is what we do. Anyway. Okay, so Leonardo DiCaprio is obviously our lead here. He plays Howard Hughes. As you mentioned, his most well-known is Titanic, but I have a super fun, least-known one for him, Don's Plum. This is a small indie film that he fought actively to keep unreleased in the United States, him and Tobey Maguire. This was in there, and I actually totally had amnesia about this. I forgot about it until I read it, and I was like, oh God, I do remember that. Do you remember the era of the Pussy Posse? I feel like I should bleep that.
Is that Leo and Toby?
That's Leo and Toby and like that little,
I knew that they were a clique, but like, I think I pushed that nickname to the back of my mind because it's surfacing something, but yeah.
I blocked it out also. But it's that little like group of douchebags is the point at that era in their lives. They were all being douchebags. They were, whatever. So this film is basically like an improvised version of that. And it's so bad. Like it makes them look so bad. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it has not been released, but it was the subject of much craziness back when it came out. So not a lot of people have seen it. I haven't seen it. Now I'm deeply curious.
Plum, yeah.
All right, Cate Blanchett, which again, we have confirmed it's Cate Blanchett, just to be clear. But there is a whole fun segment on Ellen where even Cate Blanchett doesn't clarify how to say her name. Anyway.
I would go with Blanchett. If it were my choice and I became famous, I would go with Blanchett because that rhymes with planchette. And I feel like that gets you into a hip hop verse much more like easily. For rappers making a reference to Ouija boards.
When you're becoming a famous actress, you're like, how do I work my name into a hip hop verse? Like what's the best name for that? That's the filter. Yeah, I could see that.
Sydney Sweeney is knows exactly what she's doing in a lot of ways, but her name choice, very, very specific.
Yeah, no, she apparently has had this trouble her whole life, but it's Blanchett. I'm sorry. I'll let her know though. She plays Cate Hepburn here, Katharine Hepburn, Kate and Kate. Her most well known to date is still Lord of the Rings, even though she's, like part of the ensemble, but it's a huge film, so that makes sense. Her least well known, I haven't actually seen, but I've heard the name of Coffee and Cigarettes.
I think, to be fair, almost everyone in Lord of the Rings, that every actor in that is probably their most well-known film, right? Like probably very few exceptions
I think
to
the
that.
big ones, yeah. But I mean, like the supportings, maybe not. They've maybe gone on to do bigger things. But I agree. Yeah, like some of the core for sure. Yeah. Cate Beckinsale, another Kate. We're just filled up with Kates today. She plays Ava Gardner. She does a really good job of Ava Gardner, actually. Her most well known though is a hard fucking right turn from Ava Gardner. Underworld, yes.
Yeah.
Celine.
I was gonna say this is like prime Cate Beckinsale, and she is still incredibly attractive, like doing real well for herself. But this was like when she was just coming up through the ranks, and people were like starting to notice. But yeah, that era is something.
It is something. So she was in Underworld, obviously is her most well-known one. She has another one called Uncovered that is her least well-known film. And it's weirdly, wait for it, a Spanish mystery thriller that is based on a chessboard. I have so many questions.
Yeah. Literally. I don't have a reaction.
So many questions.
Actually, my original reaction when you said it was Spanish was to go, okay. That was my reaction to your thought.
Okay. Then we have John C. Reilly, who plays Noah Dietrich, the poor man, the poor character. He's most well known probably for Step Brothers, him and Will, broing it up. He's least well known for Chicago Cab, which is like a little bitty indie. Haven't seen it.
I thought you were going to say Chicago, and I was like, wait, no, we did Chicago. We know Chicago. But we
know Chicago.
Very fitting in this. He kind of almost feels like a Mr. Cellophane. Like he's just sort of, I mean, he has a really good friend, but it feels like he's just kind of like doing Howard's bidding without a lot of actual input.
He's just getting beat up the whole time, the poor man. It's so hard to watch. Alec Baldwin plays Juan Tripp, CEO of Pan Am, in case you were curious. He is most well known to date still for Beetlejuice. And he is least well known for Forever Lulu, that was literally noted as being one of the most forgotten films in American cinema, which is kind of harsh.
I wish I had seen it so I could say I forgot it, but not me.
I can't remember it. I can't forget it. Alan Alda plays Senator Ralph Owen Brewster. He is most well known for MASH. And I think that's the thing that in general he's most well known for. If you wanted to translate it to films, it might be what women want. I don't know. But the thing he's least well known for in terms of films is To Kill a Clown. He plays a crippled vet there. So like he has a lane. It's, military themed is what we've learned.
I was in the war.
I was in the war. Ian Holm plays Professor Fitz. He is obviously another one, Lord of the Rings alum, most well known for that. Yep. And then he is least well known for The Bofors Gun, which is also a military film and I know fuck all about. So happy Googling. I don't know.
So far you're hit on like 10 for 10 on least well knowns not having seen them. So you're doing great at this. You picked the right movies.
Danny Houston plays Jack Fry, most well known for Wonder Woman, the first one, 2017. I should say the first one of the reboot, 2017. And then least well known for The Human Factor when he was 12. So, give him a break. He was 12.
What a shit performance.
Get your shit together.
He was also really good in the new Naked Gun remake or sequel with.
I know you've said that was.
He was
really
very
good.
funny as the villain in that. Very good.
Okay, it's on my list for sure. All right, Adam Scott we've seen before. Johnny Meyer here. He's most well known certainly for Parks and Rec, and he's the least well known for Hellraiser Bloodline. And I was like, I bet Lamar has seen that. Have you seen that?
I think I didn't watch it because it was like a Hulu original and it got pretty bad reviews, so I didn't bother. I'm not a huge fan of the Hellraiser series. I've only seen I think 2 of them. But I was gonna say I don't think I'm sorry. I need to watch more Hell. I need to raise a little more Hell. But Adam Scott, I did not expect to go back in his like IMDb, and he had been acting since like '94. I don't think of him as like a 30-year acting vet because now he's on Severance and he still looks almost like a baby. So yeah, just kind of bonkers to think that he's been in the biz for like 32 years at this point.
He's been hovering around. We also have Mr. Willem Dafoe here playing Roland Sweet, and he's barely here. He's almost like blink and you'll miss him.
2 scenes, 1 scene, yeah.
But he's good, and I love him, so I wanted to mention him. Obviously, most well known for Spider-Man. He is least well known, and I did not realize this is a fun fact, for The Loveless, which is his first like big leading role. He's like a motorcycle, leather-clad biker guy, and it's actually also Catherine Bigelow's directorial debut. So that's kind of cool. I haven't seen it though, so we'll have to check it out. And then last one I wanted to shout out is Gwen Stefani, because we just can't miss her with her platinum
That's the
blonde.
most 2004 thing about this movie, I think, is seeing Gwen Stefani
so
in like a Scorsese film.
It's a weird vibe. She plays Jean Harlow, who Howard Hughes didn't really like in real life, so that's always fun. She's most well known for Trolls, because I think she sings in that one, but least well known for Zoolander, because it's like a split second. She has like a cameo as herself, and she's like barely there, apparently. I don't even remember it, but that's why it's the least well known.
There you go. The only other one I wanted to mention that I was surprised you skipped, since you got in some of the deep cuts, was Matt Ross, who plays Odekirk. Speaking of Willem Dafoe, they were together in American Psycho, and then I always reference Silicon Valley for him.
This is a hefty cast, even though we spend most of our time with really Leo, to be honest, but I think next most is Hepburn. But we spend most of our time with him, and everybody else is kind of coming in and out of these moments for him. So, but it's a big cast, and it's long, so I guess it makes sense. Quick plot summary, and then we will get into the good stuff. So, a biopic depicting the early years of legendary director and aviator Howard Hughes' career from the late 1920s to the mid 1940s. Which I think it's important to call out is a very specific snippet in time in terms of his career and what ultimately happens to and with him. So it is an interesting choice, to kind of narrow the focus there, but it's important to note for sure.
Yeah, it's not a straight front to back biopic. We get a couple little flashbacks to add a little bit of color, but I think those are so like well done that we don't need to spend the first 30 minutes of the movie establishing who this person was as a child. We can just sort of make reference to it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, really quick, turn around, don't drown. It's spoiler time. It's an older movie, but I may as well, I
don't remember the title screen looking like a superhero logo. Did that hit you this time when it says The Aviator? It looks like it should be on the front of a muscular man's chest.
Yeah, yes, it's exactly what it reminded me of. The other thing it reminded me of was Rocket Man. Do you remember?
Yeah, with
not Rocket Man, The Rocketeer.
Yes, with Terry O'Quinn from Lost is in that. Yeah, I remember The Rocketeer.
It was giving me that energy for sure.
Who do you think, if the Aviator were a superhero, what would the name of his arch villain be? And it doesn't have to be like a character from this movie. What would the arch villain, their character name be?
I feel like it's got to be something like weather themed.
That was where my head went to. I was thinking
stormy, like Poseidon, or
okay. Like, you're going into mythology a little bit.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
they do that a lot. They do that a lot. So
I was going full on cheesiness of like Crosswind or.
That's great. That's actually an excellent comic book name.
Or Cloud Cover. And then the third one, which I'm not as proud of, but I had to have a third option, is just Ground Man. Because he hates the sky, so he just likes being on the ground.
That's not great.
Damn you, Aviator!
I liked your Crosswind. I guess Poseidon wouldn't be as good for anything but his spruce goose, but for his air ones, it would probably be like a Zeus or
It could be a spin-off comic where he makes the Hercules fly on the sea.
It could be Thor if we put it in Marvel.
Yeah.
We can twist some shit up. I like it. Okay, so. Speaking of the spruce goose, this film production and cost and build time and all the things, fucking insane. This budget was $110 million. They did make $213.7 million in theaters, but Scorsese himself has said that he has grossly misjudged the budget and that he had to spend $500K of his own money to cover the gap of the budget of this film.
In a way, he's just paying homage to Howard Hughes, right? That's exactly what he does in the movie.
He's very much being a Howard Hughes. Exactly. Because they built scale models of the planes. They decided to not do CGI because, fun fact, Kate Beckinsale is also in this. Pearl Harbor is 2001, so just 3 years prior. And the CGI, specifically flight scenes in that, don't go over well. That's like very panned as far as the film is actually pretty well received, but that part is not well received. And so Scorsese decided that they were going to do practical scaled models, static and scaled movable models, and shoot them that way. So they built a lot of these. And so like the XF-11, Spruce Goose are all built actually practically.
The planes look great, and most of the action sequences look phenomenal. There's a couple questionable, like I know it's not CGI, but it looks green screen, especially in like some of the earlier sequences. Not really the main crash at the end, which looks fucking awesome. But that first sequence where they're shooting the movie, there's some green screen going on there that is very 2004, but I'm not going to fault the movie for using the tech it had.
I agree with you. I had literally the note that I have in my notes is the CGI is okay. Like the backgrounding is okay. There's parts where you see it and there's parts where you don't. You can tell that the planes are real. Like that part. It's definitely more the like shooting of it all and the background of it all. But I love like just starting there with the aeronautics and the production value of all of that. I love that, to your point though, it is kind of really true to life in terms of he's really trying to bring the production value forward in this film as much as Howard Hughes did in Hell's Angels, which is where we start. We start with his production of Hell's Angels. You already are starting to see how insane of a perfectionist he is, how much of a control freak he is, how much he's willing to throw money at a problem, but also how smart he is, how brilliant he is. I mean, he is indisputably a genius, but he's got other kind of limitations in terms of you're seeing the beginnings of his OCD. It's very light here, but his control and like how he can kind of work against himself because he needs it to be perfect.
He has this same, I'm not going to call it tragic ambition, because I think at least as far as this movie goes, we get a pretty resolved ending where he ends up like accomplishing most of the things he set out to accomplish. It's kind of somber, but he has this tragic ambition about him. He reminds me of like a Safdie brothers character who we just talked about during Marty Supreme, right? Or when you look at Uncut Gems, like you watch him throughout this and you really want to root for him, but he just keeps throwing money at things and making mistakes and like never thinking twice. There's something to be said for that sort of ambition and drive and belief, like betting on yourself, but he's also like simultaneously bankrupting himself and like ruining relationships in his life.
Well, what I think is interesting is I think it's a really interesting comparison. What I think is maybe the difference is that something you touched on actually is like his confidence gives him a different energy than a Safdie character, I think, of just like, not that like a Marty Supreme is like an extreme example. To me, it's not arrogance like that. It's confidence. It's like really deeply confident that this is going to work out in a way that you almost root for and buy into. Like if he's the one sitting, he's the genius, right? He's the genius in the room. So every time he tells somebody, I'm going to make this work, I'm going to, they're like, okay, yeah, like he probably will because he's a fucking genius, And what's true about that in terms of his real life is that did happen. He did work these things out. Yes, he spent crazy money, but the gamble almost always pays off for him, the real man. And so you can see how that would build this kind of seemingly insane confidence to not only produce these crazy expensive films, but to participate in them to the degree that he does. Like he's in Hell's Angels, he is flying one of the planes. He is in there shooting it. That part is
one
accurate.
Plane that I flew in as like a I mean, I know he flew in the war and things like that, but like he doesn't need to be a pilot at this point in his life. And as soon as one plane went down that I was in, I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to stay on the ground and direct the movies from now on. And then he gets in and does it again. Like,
no, he had a really bad crash in Hell's Angels. He actually had a skull fracture and crashed the plane and totaled the plane, and then he went back up. And also in that same shoot, 3 people died. And they continued production. So he was take no prisoners, like did not fuck around. And I wonder how much he says it way later in the film, but he says, I'm Howard Hughes, the Aviator. And I love that line because I do think that is like, that's the core to his personality. Like that's the through line of like, this is how he self-identifies. But it does drive him to do kind of these crazy things.
He refuses to fail. And he says that multiple times through the film of how much he's willing to bet on himself, of saying, if this thing doesn't fly, I'll leave the United States. Like, I think he would do that if that didn't happen. And sometimes he's like, and like, there's times where he fails to accomplish something, like the whole Air Force deal, right? Like the planes don't end up getting made, but he turns it into a victory by the end because he's willing to just be like, okay, I fucked up. Like, let me go, mope for a bit. But then when the backlash happens and they're trying to like fuck him over on these deals and whatnot, the government, like he manages to turn even that into like a moral victory.
Win. Yeah. I think what's interesting too there is like, he points out some completely valid points, right? Of like, you are villainizing me for not delivering these planes. Let me give you a fucking laundry list of people who have done the same because of what the production process is and what it takes. And I don't think you can argue that he's not giving his all into the production of these planes. I think that Senate hearing, and we'll get to it later, comes at a really interesting time in his life for him to be able to turn that into a win. But he does it in real life as well.
It's also just like, it's not only like about the process, but it's the fucking United States government spends billions annually on defense and war. And even if we're not at war, like there's so much money thrown at it. He's not the only one to have profited off of like the American government.
I think they say it in the hearing. It's like 800 billion has been spent on non-delivered technology. Like, come on, like you're coming after me for 53, like fuck off. But he does deliver in terms of building these planes. The Howard Hughes, the person, which I think is really cool because it does tie into the movie, is that the Hercules that we see that he builds, he does really do that. And it does have that test flight. And two things are true here. It does have that test flight. They do recreate it for this film in the port of Long Beach, and they do it the same way. And that is a scale model, but it is a huge scale model. But the original is the largest seaplane ever built, period, full stop, like to date. And it had the largest wingspan of any aircraft ever flown until later in, I think it's 2019. Like up until like, that's a huge gap, right? That's like 1946 to 2019. To the degree that it's now at the National Register of Historic Places in, I think it's in Oregon, and it's at an Aviation and Space Museum. And the film model of the same plane is also there.
So kind of compare the two. That's neat.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's like an homage to how committed they were to the production of this as well, for sure.
Yeah. To my earlier point, like, and what we were talking about how they sort of establish Hughes right off the bat. You feel like you know him 20 minutes into this film. We get a couple of little flashbacks to kind of establish I'm not guessing, but I would assume that what we are supposed to assume is like OCD, germaphobe, potential hypochondriac type of stuff, right? I didn't look it up, but I assume that's what they want the audience to believe, and I assume that was his diagnosis in real life. But you get that, and you get his obsessions, as you said, like he just getting an idea and running with it, not thinking. And then they continuously reference, and it ties into our drink today, of like the milk, the cookies, like the childlike nature of him, of like this kid who just didn't, like, he grew up, I'm not gonna, because he is really fucking smart, but he's still just wildly chasing dreams, and he likes a good milk and cookies. I relate to that. I think that's pretty awesome.
Who doesn't? Let's be honest. I do think that's a great place to pause for a moment, of like that moment and that flashback that really sets the stage for fucking everything about this man. Like you said, we know him so quickly, and I think it's great storytelling and structure to the story on John Logan's part, because it's like we have to do something to explain why he is the way he is very quickly, so that we can then get to as much of his life as possible. And it really is in this one scene with his mom, and she's telling him, which this is true, she did this, she's telling him that he is not safe, and that these epidemics could potentially make him sick and he could die. And she was very controlling. She was, by all accounts, very loving, but very protective and controlling of him. Like, he would sleep in her room most nights, for example, and she did only give him milk, and because it was sealed and all these things. And so he develops those neuroses from a very young age, and the fundamental belief that he is not safe is just foundational. And I think actually is so is such an interesting testament to the insane success that he sees. Like for somebody who is moving through the world as afraid as he is, fundamentally, of everything around him, the things that he's done in his life are fucking wild. And I think that's what this film does really well, is like juxtaposes these two things right next to each other. Of here is his OCD, which back then didn't exist, and they had no words for what his specific mental illness was. But here's his OCD, here's his anxiety and his hypochondria, to your point, in these things, right up against his Oscar-winning films, his incredible fleet of planes, his genius, his success, his wealth, his relationships with some of the most beautiful, successful women of the era, right next to his quote-unquote crazy. I think it just does such a good job of that.
One of the things I wrote down like 90 minutes into this was, for somebody who was a germaphobe, hypochondriac, he had no problem getting his dick really dirty. He is all over the fucking board. Honest to God, Mackenzie, that is, I was like, what? Wait a second, this doesn't track.
Same thought. I had the same thought. And I also had the same thought about the scene in the fucking club where he's hitting on the cigarette girl. And I have two comments here. Number one, this is a Harvey Weinstein feature. I just need y'all to know that. He produced this film. Angelina Jolie was going to be in it. She backed out when she found out he was involved. So this is, people knew what was going on then. That gave me the ick so bad this time watching this. Maybe it's that context, but it is also a very creepy move.
Women like confidence. It's not just what he does that you're going to go into, but it's her reaction to it and like making it feel like, oh, this is what women want. Some women do like confidence, but that's not great.
Listen, to put on the here's what screen. I'll give him. The pitch is good, right? Yeah. The pitch is your pleasure, right? Give me the job of figuring out what makes you feel pleasure, right? Lovely pitch. Love that for you. But he's touching her while he's doing it, and he's met her 10 seconds before. The only asterisk I'll give him is that he does ask if he can touch her. He does get, in theory, consent, but I think the power dynamic is fucked here, right? She knows everybody in this room
in the service industry,
is famous, and she's in the service industry and all these things, but they try to make him seem so smooth in this moment. And I think they have to, because it does reflect real life. This man made the rounds. He absolutely made the rounds amongst women of this time. It's Ava Gardner, and Faith is one of the girls that like you said, she was 15 when he met her and 16 when she was quote discovered through him. And they were dating, I think, until she was 19 or 20 or something like that. But he also, Joan Russell, Hedy Lamarr, he dated every Hollywood bombshell at that time, for sure.
He asks her to smile, which I know women love when you do that. But I will say, as much as we're joking about that and how fucked up that scene is, that's again, just, there's never been an era of films that feels like where we don't have that something with the male lead where it just feels weird. But all that to say, perhaps because men are weird around women? Is that maybe why? I have no idea what you're talking about. But I do feel like I like the different dynamics of the women that he's hanging out with. To your point of Jean Harlow. So you said he doesn't really in real life didn't really care, but I feel like that's why it's sort of a throwaway scene. He's not so much holding her hand as he is just crushing it out of the nerves of watching this film that is on release night. But I like how his relationship with Katharine differs so much from the relationship with Ava and the dynamic there. I don't want to pay much mind to the 15-year-old, but that plays out in a very specific way because of that dynamic. But I like the contrast between those main two loves.
I do. And I do think it's worth calling out the core ones that they show, because these were key relationships that were well known then. The Faith thing, he did discover her. That was well known. She did break it off when she found out that he was cheating on her, blah, blah, blah. All those things are true. The dynamic between him and Cate is certainly the most compelling, because I think while it was a really short relationship on the whole, I think in real life it was 18 months. They were engaged. And I think where Cate gets so much credit for this portrayal, which we have to spend a minute on, is she just embodies her. She really embodies Katharine Hepburn. They did a side-by-side in an interview that I watched of her, and it's almost uncanny. Some of that you can't control, of course, but some of it is just like the way they do her hair. They added freckles. Like, these are all things that are not super obvious in the old black and white films, but were absolutely how Katharine Hepburn looked. And she really adopted her accent, which is a very specific Massachusetts accent. It has like this twang to it. She watched 15 of Katharine Hepburn's films repeatedly, studied them to embody her physicality, her movement, her mannerisms, her posture, etc. And I just think that comes through so well. It's almost second nature from what we see on the screen here.
I know that this is obviously based on a real person. I still think it would have been very easy for the writer-director in this to just make her another girl in this story.
Yeah.
Like when you think about Leo in Catch Me If You Can and the different women he's kind of betted, it feels like a James Bond movie, right?
Right. He's just
I like that they established the Katharine Hepburn, not just the real person, but the character in this as very powerful, but very, like, she knows what she wants, but she's also at the same time very conflicted because she's dealing with potentially fading fame. And they make allusions to that, of her trying to, wanting to stay relevant, but feeling like she doesn't really care about it, but she actually really does care about it. And I like that they give her her own internal conflict that she's working through while dating this guy, and they share a lot in common, but then they eventually come to blows over it. So,
well, and again, that's true to life. And I like that it comes off as this really compelling character because she was a fucking fascinating person. And this is a fascinating pairing. It really is, because she is very atypical. Like, she did not dress to the age, right? Like, she loved pants and suits and things like that. And there's been speculation that maybe she was gay at some point, but she was primarily not. Like, she was notably with many men, including Spencer Tracy, who we hear about toward the end of this, with whom she had a 27-year partnership. And so she is just a very fiercely independent woman. And I think what's interesting is they both are. Like, they want this partnership and companionship, and they understand each other in a different way because they're both, I love the layers that we see of these characters as being like, they are both outsiders in their own way. Like, he's not really welcome in Hollywood. Everyone in his original industry thinks he's blowing all his money and that he doesn't really understand business and he's just junior. So like, he doesn't have a place or a space to be fully understood. She's on the outs of her career. She doesn't have a place to be understood. She's not the feminine bombshell that Hollywood starlets are supposed to be at this time. And they find this just refuge in each other. And you see, they do a really good job of capturing that connection and why it would be so strong. Why they would anchor in each other.
That chemistry that the two of them have, both the characters and the actress, is great. They have some incredible lighthearted moments. They have some very tense standoffs. And then the one that got me was when they are actually vulnerable with each other, because a lot of the movie, you are seeing their outward personas of like who they are when they're on the red carpet, but then behind closed doors, you see a little more. And when he full on addresses with her, like, sometimes I think I'm seeing things that aren't there, and sometimes I worry that I'm losing my mind. And she sort of sets his mind at ease and is like, I'll help you fly the plane. And to her point, and to that point, and to Ava, I like how they circle back at the end. Again, I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but I like how they weave them back into the story of this relationship didn't work, both of these relationships, for a multitude of reasons, but we still care very much for you. And then stopping in to try and like get him back on his feet is very touching.
I do. I think that is very touching. I think it's really sweet, the different relationships that he has. And I think it's just emblematic of, there was very limited care at this point, of course, for these types of mental illnesses. You know, again, there wasn't a word for obsessive compulsive disorder at this time, and people didn't understand really what was happening to him. And so you see these different ways of handling him that are both rooted in love, like a different kind of love, but rooted in love of like, this is a man who we see is brilliant, is incredible, but is misunderstood and doesn't have a good way to be cared for. And I think Cate is the most accepting of it, but she can't hang, she can't hang in real life. He does really hold over her head the Philadelphia Story thing. Like, she does, her career is waning. She's in the play, The Philadelphia Story, so he buys the rights to it so that if and when it gets made into a film, she has to be the star. And that did actually happen. And that is the film that revived her career. So she does attribute that to him. And he does buy up all these photos of her and Spencer and prevent it from coming to light. Because Spencer Tracy, fun fact, was married for the remainder of his life to somebody else. But she and he had a 27-year well-known relationship. So, and they lived separately. It wasn't like that. They just never got a divorce. And he protects her. I think he recognizes in her this person that tried really hard to love him, but that he is very hard to have a relationship with. And I think he knows that deep down, and he still loved her anyway.
Yeah. The dynamics with the two main female leads are very, I love how direct Ava, like telling him multiple times in like the past scene and then the more present in the film context scene, like both times he's like, will you marry me? And she's like, no, like both times. Yeah. Just love how direct she is. Like, no, I don't love you. Why would I marry you? But I wanted to pivot really quick because we're talking about all the people in his life. And I think we got to talk about the boys here too. I think Noah, Odenkirk, and who's the scientist that he pulls on?
Ian Holm, the Fritz,
but I don't
Professor
remember
Fritz. He's
Professor Fritz. Like the three of them are just throughout. Like there's a million characters in this and a lot of recognizable faces, but I feel like the three of them are just constantly throughout this and always being very supportive and occasionally casting some doubts and making Howard think through some of his thoughts a little more than he probably would have otherwise. But I love how they're still standing there with him at the end when he finally like realizes his successes.
Yeah, I think this is like. I think the people around him on the whole, they loved him and respected him and they understood his brilliance. But again, none of them knew how to handle some of the things that he went through and that he learned. And it's such a heartbreaking story in the sense that his paranoia and his OCD, and I think that the film does a really good job of showing how it progresses. It is a slow burn. This is supposed to be approximately a 20-year-ish period. And it does get worse throughout that. And you see him struggling with it himself the little things, sorry to cut you off, but like at the beginning, he's just looking at his finger on his knee. Like there's something we can't see. And I'm like, what is he? I know. Scene. Yeah. The bathroom, like what are you talking about when he doesn't want to leave the bathroom or the bottles on the stake on the club where like they're arranged in a certain way and Errol Flynn moves a pee and it like he can't
okay.
And that's relatively early and the hand washing thing as well.
Yeah, English is a complicated. Pee can mean many things. I know. So I'm thinking there's also English. Like the urine bottles. I didn't want to get there yet, but like also, to your point, it's a slow buildup, and at first you don't notice exactly what's happening, but then it gets more and more obvious.
It does, and I think again they do a good job of showing that. They do a good job of in that pee scene, for example. It is the early first half of the film that we have to
Can we call it something other than the pee scene? Can we call it the dinner scene, the steak scene?
The dinner scene, the steak scene. But it's the peas that he freaks
Doesn't he
out
also
about.
am I imagining, or doesn't he take a bite of his steak too? Am I imagining that?
He starts to take a bite of his steak and then
no, I thought that Errol like took his fork and took a bite of his food and that's why he didn't eat. I'm Mandela affecting myself 24 hours ago. I watched it. Anyway.
It's the roids, I think. No, I think, but I think the cinematography there is worth calling out because the coloring of this scene and early scenes like that is very distinct, and it was actually a really intentional choice on the part of Richardson and I'm sure Scorsese as well, where like the first part has these sequences that are two extinct color processes for the first half and the second half. And one in the first half is the 2-color methodology. And that is what makes things look like green and cyan. And that's where you get these really like red and cyan contrasts in the early scenes, which is again, like most of his time with Katharine Hepburn is under that kind of color combo.
When they're at the golf course, I was like, what the fuck is happening to the TV right now? Because it was this odd, like aquamarine golf course, like just this crazy cyan type color. And then like I looked it up afterward and it's like, oh, they're paying homage to how color was done in these time periods, basically.
And how he did it in his own films. There was a specific version of this process called multicolor that Howard Hughes actually owned in terms of like a technology. And so he would have put it in his own films. And then as the technology progressed, they switched to the tricolor method, which is like the 3-strip Technicolor. Technicolor, and it goes into, I think that's like 1935 and after would have been how that shifted. And you see the color change happen in the film. And that's where the color starts to look a little bit more normal because it's just incorporating more colors, more.
I
Yeah.
liked
And so
like the cinematographer crushes it in the color component. I also thought there was a very, I don't know how intentional this was or if I'm just reading into it too much, but I thought there was a good writing slash directing cinematographer joke where they have the line about like, oh, it's a sex film, an sex film. And I'm like, but it's movie sex. It's not, you know, whatever that conversation. Like 5 minutes later is when he and Katharine hook up for the first time. And I didn't pick up on it the first time I watched it, but as you're watching it, it's this long shot of the camera kind of moving down from one room of the house into the next as they're trying to walk toward like the study or the bedroom, whatever it is, they hook up on the couch, but you're barely seeing them at all. And it's this very classy way of telling this like walk to bed and they're hooking up, but it's kind of off camera and they're getting undressed. Yeah.
You're seeing the coat drop.
It's very cool. It's like, it's almost like the shot in Tar we talked about, with that 10-minute shot in Tar where the camera is changing directions throughout. And it feels like you're in the middle of like a theater performance. Because that's what's happening in this. The camera's like circling almost. And every time it comes back, they're next to you in a new room. I just thought that was very creative and maybe unintentionally funny based on the early dialogue.
No, I think the layers are there and they're intentional. And I think that's part of what makes this, in terms of a film, like really cohesive. I mean, it had 11 Oscar nominations that we kind of didn't really go over, but it's all the ones you would expect, right? And it's because all of these pieces put together are really strong, you know, really, really well done. And I think there's also a lot of, you know, credit given to the portrayal of his mental illness, to the portrayal of OCD, is that it's very in line with how traumatic that is, you know, and what that is to experience. You know, he's the one that's one of the ones that stands out to me the most, even more than the screening room scene, is the bathroom scene.
Yes.
The early bathroom scene where he is trapped in the bathroom. And there's like layers to that. He can't help the guy get the towel. Even though in theory, like his hands are clean, he could touch the clean towel, not even touch the man to get, like, he's a mental block there. He can't do it. And he has to tell a person he doesn't know, who is on crutches, that he can't help him, you know, which is quite a big statement. And then he can't open the door. And you see him contend with that and be trapped there. And that could have been 5 minutes. That could have been 5 hours.
I believe this, people can call me out if I'm wrong. I think that's 2 separate scenes. Like, I think he does
I think it is. It's the bathroom.
Then later, when to your point earlier, when his mental state is devolving throughout this, there's all these there's like 5 trips to the bathroom in this where he's washing his hands. It's very intentional. And then that one where he uses the one towel, gets blood, and then he uses the second towel, puts blood on it. And I love, again, great cinematography because and directing, because they're showing you his thought process without narrating it, right? Like he's looking at the trash can, he's looking at the sink, he's looking at the doorknob, like, you know exactly what's going on in his head. And it's just like horrifying. You feel bad, you feel claustrophobic, and thankfully somebody else comes in and he shamefully sneaks out the door. It's heartbreaking.
And he does it. That's exactly it. He does it with shame. You know, he's ashamed. He knows that he's embarrassed, and he knows. And that happens later when he's repeating phrases and he literally just tries to practically suffocate himself.
Oh my God. That like got me emotional this time watching that, when he like gets upset. Like,
he's upset at himself. He's like, how do I stop? Like, he knows he can't stop it. And one of the things I thought was so interesting about that is, 2 things, is that I think there's a pivotal shift when him and Katharine break up, because she's been kind of his anchor up to this point, and she's also like accepted these things about him and helped him navigate these scenarios. And then she can't anymore. And the way she does that is, I mean, not in real life, she didn't leave him right then for another man, but he feels betrayed at the end of the day. And so that breaks down in a way that I think directly impacts his psyche, and these things devolve. And then secondarily, as he's going through that, you see these like tics get worse. His shame around it gets worse because he has no outlet for that anymore. He has nobody who sees him and accepts him as he is anymore. And you see that get worse and worse. And one of the things I think is so compelling is how Leo plays this role. You know, he does such an incredible job. And one of the things I didn't know until researching this time around is that Leonardo DiCaprio has stated that he has a lighter case or a less severe case of OCD, and that when this filming happened, he sort of like let his control of that go. And it got worse in the months after filming because he sort of was really
I can
leaning into the
imagine.
character. Yeah. And one of the things, the way he described it, one of the things he said was so interesting to me is he said, OCD is like you're playing mind games with yourself all the time.
Mm.
And that resonated with me so much because it's like you can see that in his performance. You can see Howard in the middle of a mind game or a chess match or a battle in his own head with his own behavior. Like he wants to win, he wants to beat this thing, but he just can't. And it's really fucking heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah, you kind of alluded to it. That scene when Katharine leaves and he burns all the clothes. That I think is the first time in the movie where you get actually concerned. That's the tipping point of, oh, he's really not well. Like we knew there was something there on a first watch, but like, wow, this guy's really not well. I don't know that this is going to have a happy ending.
Yeah, and he did that. If somebody got sick around him, he would do that. He would burn all his clothes. And I do think some of these other things that they show really well and they intersperse really well is like, this is again a brilliant man who is producing films, directing films. He is building literally airplane fleets, either commercially or militarily. And he is also writing and spending an hour writing a 45-page memo about how to serve canned peaches. Like literally. That's a compulsion. That is, somebody cannot stop that. And the way he has to be handed a bag or a tissue or whatever at a 45-degree angle, they have it as like a voiceover. And it's a voiceover to the screening room scene where he's in just utter isolation. And it's so well done, but it precedes, and this is I think the last thing I think is worth really talking about in depth is the Pan Am battle, the David Goliath moment. Like he's kind of the David here against the Pan Am Goliath and the Pan Am machine with the senator and all the things that are against him. But he's also at the height of his breakdown. And you see that come to fruition in this insane meeting. And I don't know if that particular meeting is true. The hearing is true. But I don't know if that particular meeting is true. But what struck me about that was the empathy that came from Tripp in that moment. Like they're definitely in the middle of a negotiation, but he could have gone a lot harder against a man who's behind a door and clearly suffering from some kind of paranoia. And on the whole, it's a pretty civil disagreement. It's a very interesting conversation.
It's light. It's empathy. I don't think I think he's still trying to achieve his end goals, but he's trying to do it in the classiest, not underhanded or like feel dirty about himself way possible. But I feel like
he absolutely wants to win. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I just think he feels bad for Howard the human. And
he even says that to Noah of like,
to Noah,
you've got like 3 days to get him TV ready, basically. Don't
like
let him
he does
show
not,
up like
he
that.
can't show up like this. I mean, he doesn't have to say stuff like that. That's more what I mean of like, he's sort of vaguely looking out for him in a
bit. I mean, when you think through, because I think honestly, is it Owen, the senator? I think he's the more compelling kind of villain in this.
Yeah.
Because he's just outright corrupt and taking money and trying to fuck this guy over and screw his business. So like Tripp is the other half of that. He's the one paying him off and like taking care of him and all this stuff. But to Howard's point, like that's just our business. People do that all the time. So it's that the game is the game. But I feel like the scene with Owen that that's the fucked up part. To your point about the empathy from Tripp, the flip side is when he goes to Owen's and he's like,
with him.
He puts a fingerprint on the glass. He serves him fish with the face still on it. Like, and then he holds it together. But as soon as he gets out, he's like a sweaty mess and he's got to throw up. Like it's rough to watch that because the dude is just being like cruel.
And they're weaponizing, again, this is a time where you don't fully understand these things, but it is inexcusable. They're weaponizing a mental illness,
right.
And it's so brutal to watch, and like you said, he pulls it together. I think that's what's interesting here is I think this is in the stage of his illness where he's really at the height of it, but he can still lightly control it. He can still rein it in a little bit. what we don't see is that eventually fades as well. And what I think is interesting here is that you end on these sort of heroic moments, right? Like he goes to the hearing. That is absolutely true. That's almost verbatim the transcript. And he comes off as a hero. And this is where sort of his paranoia about TWA and the conspiracy and all these things, that could easily be written off as his own paranoia. This is where that plays to his advantage, that he thinks this way and that he is maneuvering this way. And he presents really well at this hearing. And he calls out, again, he's a fucking genius. He calls out all these things that are completely fair. And he wins, right? He wins this kind of scenario. Then he goes and flies the spruce goose. He does do that. It is actually largely considered a failure, even though it flew, because like that was it. It never got past the prototype phase.
He got to stay American, baby. Like that's all that matters.
He got to stay American. He got it off the, he got it out of the water. So he did what he said he would do in that sense. Here we see that positioned as these victorious moments for our protagonist. And that's awesome. I do love that for him. What we end on, though, is the way of the future. It's the repeated, the way of the future. And
let's talk about that, because I interpreted that differently this second time around. I interpreted that as to mean he's had this glorious moment. He gets off that. It's like, okay, we conquered that. What about jet engine? He's got his next big idea. Oh, yeah. And which he's pulling his guys along.
Beautiful moment. That
I'm just like, okay, we start that now. Go spend all this money. We never stop. We never stop. And then he has that line of the way of the future. And it starts out and he starts repeating himself. And his friends, put him in a room by himself. And John C. Reilly's character is like, don't let anyone see him like that. He's in there by himself. And it is heartbreaking in that moment. And it's tragic again of like, not that you don't get over having a condition like this, but like, could he control it a little more? And you're originally heartbroken. But what I like about it this time is it circles back to the beginning. And we talked about this with the mom and her telling about the quarantine, making him spell it, all these things that kind of led to some components, at least, of this condition that he has, right? But it ends with him not in that tragic line where we saw in the opening credit, or not the opening credits, but the first scene, but it goes a little further. And then he's getting into his big dreams. And he says, I'm going to be like a pilot and I'm going to own a business and I'm going to be the most famous man in the world, whatever it is. And then it comes back to him. So we're seeing that it wasn't all bad from the mom, to your earlier point, that she did love him. And we end on him almost starting to control that line of dialogue. I didn't look this up, but if I were making a guess, if I were the writer in this scenario, I was interpreting that as him composing himself and getting more confident in that single line of dialogue and being like, my company is the way of the future. Like he's feeling it for himself. Yeah. That's how I heard it this time, because his tone changes a little bit.
Okay.
He sort of steals himself. He looks at the mirror and he's like nodding and he's like, the way of the future. Like it feels to me like he has resolved that in his own way.
I think that's a cool interpretation, to be fair. I don't read it that way. I think mostly because I think you've seen it devolve for a reason, that it's not really going to get better. And again, they don't know how to care for it, so it just really can't get better. It's not that there's not a willingness, it's that they don't know what to do. And so I read that as, because right before that, right, what triggers this is sees some people in the crowd and he's paranoid and he doesn't know who they are. And, and they ask him, he asks like he always does that person work for me? And he's like, Howard, everybody works for you. And it's like dismissive, but not helpful. Like it's supposed to be funny, but it's not helpful, because then to me that reads as like, okay, the walls are closing in.
Yeah.
Because everybody works for me. Everybody could be a threat. I have to self-isolate. And, that he has tried the quarantine spelling multiple times as a way to like tether himself back. And it seems in this moment like it's not doing that. The tick is not stopping. It's not helping anymore. So I read it as I'm almost committing to the mental illness of it all.
Yeah.
Of like, this is how bad it's going to get. And I also think it's a bittersweet moment, because again, I think it happens on purpose right after all these wins.
Yeah.
You're seeing these things that are good, but then this thing that is alluding to a really dark future, that is what happened and that they didn't really want to show. And I think that also is a very interesting choice of this film, to stop and to kind
the
of...
years you mentioned earlier of like, this is the specific part of his life we're talking about and we're going to end it here for this reason. Yeah.
Yeah, like, because here he gets to still be a hero. And again, we can't take away from this man that he was brilliant, he's incredibly accomplished, he did all these things, but he lived the end of his life as a true recluse in Vegas, and he was like buying casinos and in complete isolation, and he was, his nails and some of the hair and the stuff that they show in the preview in the screening room, like some of that is alluded to here. That happens and gets much, much worse later. He couldn't shower, bathe, hygiene. Like he was afraid of, basic hygiene in terms of like having to touch things and do other things to take care of himself. He was afraid of food. He was afraid, like when he passed away, it was of kidney failure, and he was 79 pounds.
Jeez.
So I am glad, don't get me wrong, that this film does not
have a sequel.
At that point, right? Like, does not have a sequel.
Aviator 2, Rise of Crosswind.
Oh my god, that's so fucked up. No, I'm glad that it doesn't go there, because I don't think that's how this man should be remembered. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a mental illness that he couldn't control. But that's why I look at the end of this and go,
yeah, I think that
this is not valid. Getting better.
Yeah.
But it's sad because, and I do think they capture this in the film. It's like, he's a guy who did exactly what you said. It flashes back to everything that he wanted, and he did it. Check, check, check. Right? Like, he conquered the world. He conquered the sky. But then he's a prisoner in his own mind.
Yeah. And his next question is always like, what's next? What's next? So
yeah.
It's like,
and how much of that is like not only his own brilliance and ambition, but the need to be preoccupied, the need to be busy, because otherwise I can't function, But I think all that to say, like, that the film does capture that. It captures that energy of like, this is a man who went to great heights, did incredible things, and here's the stunning visuals and performances to prove it. But also it's laced with that bittersweet of like, his life was really hard in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah. Not a full on, like, what I would consider like a front to back biopic. It is a very specific story meant to not glorify, but show you the victory in this one specific instance, as well as the hardships that kind of, he was still dealing with. So I do think it's important they still address it at the end, and we don't end on a full on happy note based on what really happened. So good call.
No, yeah. And I think just to round us out on Cate, who has been the feature of our month here, obviously, I think her performance, while it is, well, of course, because again, it's such a long movie, we spend most of our time with Leo. She just steals the show again. And I think that's one of the many things that won her this Oscar, is like her commitment to that role. She was, taking cold showers a la Katharine Hepburn. Like, she was doing everything top to bottom to really embody this character. And I think that comes through in her performance. And I do love that this is one of her, her award-winning breakout moments. I think some of her longer form turns that we didn't talk about are also really interesting and worth looking at. These ones that we've talked about, as we've watched them, I've realized like there's not enough Cate in them.
She's always like the second or third build in a lot of these. Yeah.
And she's she looms big in my mind when I think about these films in retrospect. You don't realize that until I think rewatch of, you're like, there's not nearly enough of her in this, but she's great in them. And I encourage people to watch Carol and Blue Jasmine, which are a bit more character study that you spend more time with her. They're just not as well known. They're not, most people won't have seen all of those, but she's brilliant. So I want to just shout her out one more time before we give our ratings.
Yeah. Props to Cate. Give her all the flowers. Also props to her family, as much as I hate to say it in this, the Hepburns, because if I had to sit at that dinner with those people, I'd probably burn all my fucking clothes too. Like, I was like, this dinner is my worst nightmare. Yeah.
They were awful to him, and she doesn't defend him. All she says is, you're a fine bunch of bullies, and then they move right on in their conversation. And I'm like, bitch, defend him. Like,
I've been at a table where there's like two of those people sitting with you that are just like, let's talk about me, and I'm going to guide the conversation. And I have this interesting story, and like, what were you saying? And cutting you off. Like, I've been at tables with a couple of those. I've never been at a table with like 10 of those types of people. It's fucking horrible.
Also, her ex-husband is there, who she did maintain a friendship with for the rest of her life. But like, what weird fucking vibes? Like, really? And you didn't give him a heads up till you're pulling up?
Shout out. I never remember that actor's name, but he is like one of Scorsese's favorites. I was going to call that out because he's in The Departed. He's like the realtor in The Departed. He's in every Scorsese movie, but like he's in 2 scenes in each movie. So shout out to him. He's doing really well, I assume. Ratings wise, I think the only 2 things that I didn't touch on that I did, 3 things, I apologize, really quick. The humor in this, for it being dark subject matter, there's some really great comedy.
Yeah.
The whole memory scene. I love Professor Fritz going from being
just winging it.
He's a cloud identifier or a cloud finder at the beginning of the film. Then he's a
meteorologist.
Then he's like a breast doctor, like a mathematician measuring breasts of Hollywood movies. And then at the end, he's like the co-pilot. That's a nice little sweet moment.
I also
just
love that he literally in front of the panel is like this. He's like throwing his hands up, like, what?
Yeah, me? And Leah, Howard answers him too. He goes, yeah, you. That's your name. But yeah, some really good comedy. As dark as it is, that plane crash when he is burned on like 80% of his body, he's like in all these casts and whatnot in bed. But they cut to Noah talking to the doctor, and they're like, "We gave him a blood transfusion," and he's like, "Whose blood?" He's not going to like that. Great line for how dark that is, but
I love that the doctor's like, he's not going to probably like anything anymore. Like, fuck you. We saved him. Like,
we don't know if he's going to live anymore.
Which is insane because, again, that plane crash was as bad as they portray it.
My second thing. This is like a top 10 plane crash in cinema. It looks so fucking good. The shots are on the outside of the plane. They're inside the houses it's crashing through. They're in the cockpit. They're above the plane.
All practical scale models.
Use practical, people, because when the wings are flying through those homes and the fire that's coming into those homes is real fire, the explosion at the end on the plane, it's just insane. So good looking.
Beautifully done. Terrible scene. Beautifully done.
Yeah. And the last thing I had was we talked about the composer, but the music in this, like the jaunty kind of jazz and whatnot that's in here. I think the score is a little underrated. I liked it a lot more on second watch. So
I think, I don't know that Howard Shore is underrated, but yeah, it's for sure.
Well, I just said really it, so you can tell him that Lamar said that and we can talk over coffee. But yeah, all that to say, I slept on this one. I watched it once back in probably the late aughts and was like, yeah, that was fine. But I was into a lot of other Scorsese stuff by then. Watched it this time through, and I was like, I really appreciate this the second time through. I understand why some folks might not be on board with it. It's a little long, and if you don't find the subject matter of this specific character or like the time period interesting, it's probably not going to be for you. But I would give it like an 8. I think it's really good.
It is really good. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, but wait, I forgot to ask you before I get my rating. Did you have a terrible factoid for us this week that you wanted to share?
So I have one, and I contemplated doing this for the cold open. Mackenzie, if I asked you, you're not sure, this isn't like I'm going to guess or anything, but if I said, think of a random number between 1 and 99, what's the first number that pops into your head?
11.
Okay, you always go 11 because it's your favorite number. So statistically, the number that, if you ask people to do that, I don't know where the study is, don't quote me on this, but like 37 seems to be like the most random number in the English
37
language.
37 or 27, I feel like I say those a lot.
There's something about the number 7, and then it's sometimes 3, 73 is also, but if you're coming up with a punchline for a joke and you're trying to make it seem like something happened a bunch of times, a lot of comedians use the number 37 for some reason. I also remember in Clerks, censor this for the kiddos in the car, but like, she sucks 37 dicks. Like that's the number they went with for like, you suck 37 dicks in a row. There's Spinal Tap had potentially 37 members. Like it's referenced in comedy constantly.
But they have one up to 11. Let's just be clear.
And look at that. See, 11, 37. It's all coming together. All that to say, the least interesting fact about this, and not to make light of it, because when you're watching it, it's a dark scene, even though it's kind of become a quotable, not meme at this point, but like the show me the blueprints thing. And people say that to me of like, what's the plan for tonight? Show me the blueprint, show me the blueprint. Fucked up in its own way. But apparently he says it 37 times. So maybe there is supposed to be some comedy in there. I don't know.
Oh my God.
I thought that was an interesting fact, but everyone else on IMDb, 5 out of 6 found it interesting, but of the number, it's really low. It's down at the bottom of the list. So
I was going to say, you loved this factoid, but nobody else did.
Yeah. So I kind of flipped it this week because a lot of the facts that weren't good were just flat out boring and not worth talking about. But
oh, I love it. Okay. Well, it's an interesting one. That's for sure. With this one, I would say I love this movie. I think it's really well done. It's relatively short in terms of Scorsese films. Like he's actually broke 3 hours for the first time in 2005. So only a couple years after this. So they start to get longer and longer and longer after this. But this is, shorter, middle of the road for him. So to me, it doesn't feel as long as it is, which to me is telling, because there's so much to it. There's so much meat here. There's so much to watch and engage with. I also I love period pieces in general and movies in general, but I love the history here. I love the whole old Hollywood tie-ins. And I also just think this is a man who's like a really fascinating person. And it's a very bittersweet story. So I really enjoy it on pretty much all the levels. I think there's some things that could be trimmed. I think to your point earlier, there's like one scene that's like a little kitschy in terms of the way we see the dogfight scene and the planes. But on the whole, I think it's really tight. So I would say like an 8.5.
Yeah.
8.5, 9.
Just like, I think that's, we're kind of in lockstep there, because just like the subject matter and just like the films that Howard Hughes, I think this is an ambitious film. Like, to your point about the budget and everything, it's trying to do a lot of things. It doesn't go 10 for 10, but it still ends up being pretty damn good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. All right, kids. Well, thanks for hanging with this one. This is like literally an epic, but I think it's worth it, and I think it's one of Cate Blanchett's best, but definitely not her best. So go watch more of her stuff. This has been a really fun month, but all it made me want to do actually was watch more of her, because she's great. I love her.
Yes. Yeah. Good call on the Cate month. Cate Blanchett rhymes with planchette. And Corvette.
Thanks for coming along for the ride. Even though at the end of the month you still can't say her name, I love it. Come back next week, you guys, because we're gonna do something a little wacky.
I have been campaigning for this, and we've been trying to make this work. This was actually almost one of the first concepts of the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Because when we first started doing this, we were kind of merging two ideas, which was the love of cinema and the love of tasty drinks. And my pitch was like, let's kind of get a little shit-faced and then talk about movies. And so we do that here. But we're going to try to do something a little interesting over the course of the next month. It's going to come out weekly like it normally does. But you guys have the option of listening to them week by week, or you could wait until the end of the month and listen to all 4 in a row, because we're going to record all 4 in one day.
We're going to be so drunk. I can't. It's like, literally, we were talking about doing this in March. So like, to the Mars point, we had to figure out when this was going to land, because we had to find a day where we could sit for 4+ hours, usually plus, probably closer to 6 at that point, and just drink and record and talk about movies. And I think it's going to get crazy. Not only are we going to just like plow through all of them, we are going to talk about like kind of an interesting theme here. We're going to do like space mayhem. I don't know. That just literally came to mind of just space mayhem craziness. We're going to talk we're going to finally do Independence Day, for example. We'll tease that one out for you. We're going to do Project Hail Mary. Maybe we'll take some suggestions on the others, but this is the idea of what we're going to be running with. So
I promise that I will not allow the audience to pick Battlefield Earth. You really did not want to
fuck all of you up. It's not happening. It's literally not happening. All right, kids. Well, in the meantime, until that fun day,
follow us on our socials. We drink and we watch things, mainly on Instagram. We had some very fun comments this week. I figure we should start giving some shout outs there to the folks that are interacting and engaging there. Stellar Dad, who apparently loves bandits like you.
Yeah.
Saw it in 2001.
Me and 2 other guys. It's me and Stellar Dad and a guy that I know from work. Like we're hanging in together.
Bad wigs. You love the fact that it doesn't end in a threesome. I don't know what you guys are latching onto here, but fine. And then one more to call out. I don't know if it's Abgushte, Abgushte, pointed out the whole like poly thing of just to them, it's a red flag if people try to get you. I'm not speaking. I'm just throwing opinions out there.
Listen,
guys.
It was deeply a red flag. Like that was not incorrect.
Because they also came at you separately too. That was the other thing. It wasn't just getting invited to this relationship.
No, it was
not
like
consulting each other.
They hadn't conferred with each other, which they historically had done on everything else I had observed. So that was a weird vibe. Yeah, it was definitely a red flag. Red flags all the way. Which again, I'll share with you guys what I shared with this commenter, which is that they're divorced and in monogamous relationships now, so it didn't work out. I can tell you.
Shout out to y'all if you're listening. I hope you're happy with your new lovers. But yeah, do you interact with us on social? I want to do a better job of, letting people know and thanking them for giving us that engagement. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, friends. All right. Well, in the meantime, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.
Except Lamar.
No milk for me.